Hey, what is up, everybody? Another awesome episode of Walk-ins Welcome. Thanks for tuning in with us today. I'm excited about our guest, but as always, we're here to help you get more patients, deliver better care, get repeat visits, and scale your clinic. Michael, what's up, man?
What's happening? And so this is still our month of interviews. We have lots of interviews this month, and Georgina is on this list today. But I will say this, for the person who's thinking about starting their urgent care, this is the episode. This is the one that we're getting some details on, that we're going to get some like real information of like what you really should be expecting and needing, especially from a financial standpoint. So we're very super excited to have Georgina Perry on today. She's with Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. She's a CPA, and her goal is to look at your financials, make improvements, have their operational consultants, and overall, like if there's something going on in your healthcare facility that has anything to do with money, she's there to help improve that and make reports and all the things that just take you to the next level. Georgina, thank you for coming on.
Say hello to the Walk-ins Welcome audience and tell us one thing about you that nobody else knows.
Well, hello. Thank you guys so much for having me. One thing about me that probably a lot of my professional acquaintances do not know is that I am an avid tap dancer.
Okay.
Man, I did not see that coming.
I didn't catch that one at all.
I got my accounting degree in college, but went to a liberal arts college and was 2 credits shy of another major in dance. And I still take tap classes today.
All right. So where do you exercise that skill? Where do we go to find Georgina tap dancing?
It's really just in my garage, in my driveway. I'm trying to get my daughter interested. So we tap a lot in the driveway. But, you know, there could be shows coming up. I don't know. We'll see what the interest is after this.
I love it.
I kind of love it, though.
Yeah, that's cool. I love it when we ask this question because we get the best answers, and that's such a good one. Tap dancing.
Yeah, a tap dancing CPA.
All right. So you just found your unique selling proposition for any emails that you go out. It has to have a video of you tap dancing.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you see new profit coming into a business, you're like, well, I got to tap dance to that. And you send them a tap dance.
Exactly.
We tap dance all over the tax code.
There you go. Tap dance on the tax code.
Well, let's get right into it. Georgina, I want to know more about Carr, Riggs, Ingram, LLC. Tell us about your firm. Tell us exactly what you guys are in business to do from a medical perspective. Let us know what's going on in your world.
Absolutely. So Carr, Riggs, and Ingram is a top 25 national CPA firm. We have offices in 12 different states, and we're always growing. We actually also have an office in Mexico. So we are international technically.
Yes, you are.
But I think what makes us different is that each of our offices has different specialties, and then we really fully utilize our network and can get the best of everybody's practice skill sets. So I work with all of our medical clients from across the country. So if we have a client in one of our Mississippi offices or in a Florida office, the partners who they're working with, when an issue comes up, they know to call me, and then I can help their clients and kind of fill that void in their skill sets. So each of us doesn't have to be everything to every client. And in my department, we work exclusively with medical practices of all shapes and sizes, specialties, across the board, you name it, we've worked with it. And we work with clinics from an operational perspective, which, yes, typically turns into a financial perspective. But our first connection with clients is usually through helping them help their day go smoother, make their work processes better, make them more efficient and effective. So a lot of our projects can look like assessing every step of the revenue cycle, looking for holes in that process, or looking for money that they're leaving on the table for services that they're already providing. We have a lot of experience doing initial or ongoing insurance credentialing for providers. So as you open up a new practice, bring on a new provider, add a location, or want to contract with a new payer, we are experienced in that area and have staff who do that, on a routine basis and are familiar with the processes.
Well, I think you're always going to strike a chord with.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
said you're always going to strike a chord when it comes to getting paid. So I think those payer contracts are definitely going to be a topic of discussion.
A groaning topic, right? Like, I don't want to talk about payer contract. And then we've noticed in the urgent care space, the dirty word is United. It tends to be the dirty word.
She's like, I can't say anything.
No offense. I mean, I don't have any beef with United or anything, but they've been causing a lot of problems for a lot of specialties. Okay. So it's not just urgent care. They're just tightening their belts and trying to not pay as best they can.
Why would anyway? I could go into details.
I think that's a topic for another day. Yeah, that's
a whole other topic. Today we want to stay on the positive note. I tell you what, let me kind of set this up a little bit because you've given some really good information, and I feel like with that info we could go down 30 different rabbit holes. But for today's podcast, let's talk to the startup urgent care, or somebody who is like, I want to own an urgent care and I haven't gotten started. So let me set the table a little bit here. When we are about to start with an urgent care, we start about 45 days to 2 months before their opening date. That's where we get involved. And then we're obviously holding their hand until opening day. And then we have a process ongoing and then long-term. Yeah. So from a completely different point of view, which is setup, taxes, payor contracts, all the different things that your firm handles with the niche in the medical practice, just take a few minutes and start like how soon you need to get involved before an opening date, all the way up until when maybe you do a handoff or you go into retainer.
Yeah, because like from our standpoint, they already have a location. They already have credentialing figured out. They're basically just hiring and getting things in place. And then we're getting their marketing ready. So but yours like at the very ground level where they just have an idea and a business plan maybe, and they want to make it happen, but sometimes they don't know where to start.
Right.
Right. Well, a great place to start is with your CPA. One of the first things that we do, usually about 9 to 12 months out from opening the doors, is a financial feasibility study. So we'll meet with clients, and this is really for across the board with all of our healthcare clients who want to open up their own practice. We sit down and we talk with them, how do they envision this practice to be? How do they envision themselves making money? What expenses do they think they'll incur? We put together, it's a big ballpark budget projection to kind of see, what do we think? If somebody says they want to work 1 day a week, but they want to have this, 6,000 square foot office, that's not financially feasible. But so if somebody says, I want to work 4.5 days a week, I want an office with 3 exam rooms and a lab and an x-ray room. I'd also like to hire, a physician's assistant. I'd like to do Department of transportation, drug screens, and workers' comp. When you start putting all of those pieces together, it starts to paint the picture of how are they going to make money and what's it going to cost for them to provide those services. So once we sit down and we have that initial conversation and we kind of have an idea of what their vision is and how they think this is going to play out, we put numbers on the paper and we look to see, is this possibly profitable? And if it is, then you go on and dig into the details about who, what, when, how, and all the various players.
That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So they may not at this point have any idea when they want to open.
Yes. So oftentimes we work with clients at this phase who say, I'm so frustrated with my employed situation. I really hate being a part of this health system, or I don't like the way we're doing things at my current office, that's owned and operated by somebody else. I have no ownership. There's no buy-in potential for me. This is a dead-end job. I'm really miserable. I think I want to open up my own practice. So it's typically those types of conversations when we come into play that early. Now, of course, there are times when we'll get brought in later in the process. Maybe somebody already has this idea. They might feel, they have a good handle on the numbers. and they know that this is going to financially work. And maybe they're working with a realtor who's found them a great space. And then maybe that's what starts the clock ticking. So maybe we open after they sign the lease, and that gives us 3 or 4 months to do what needs to come after that. The longer that you have to prepare, I think the better prepared you'll be. But I've definitely opened up practices from scratch. I think 3 months, was my shortest from go time
That's
to
pretty
doors
good.
open. Would not recommend that, but it can be done.
No, you just told everybody that's listening that you can do this in 3 months.
Yeah, that's
I
what
just
I
want
just
you to
heard.
know what you just put out there.
What
into
I'm
the universe.
hearing, if you start today, you'll have a January open date.
There we go. Let's go.
Right, January 1. Here we come.
Want to go ahead and drop your information?
Yeah,
real
exactly.
Quick. I was just kidding.
Which is funny. Now, I will say this. So I'm curious because we've experienced it on our end with some clients over the past couple of years where they tell us a projected opening date and it gets pushed back and it gets pushed back. What are some common things that you see that they just were not ready for that caused delays or just hard stops saying, okay, we can't actually move forward anymore because of this thing I had no idea about?
Right. I think a lot of it revolves around the location and the facility space. I was just recently part of a panel it was about real estate and healthcare, and about the general contractor who was on the panel with us was saying that things have not gone back to normal since COVID, and it's been one reason for a delay after another, and that construction delays are still happening. There's a strike on the docks, I think, with the loaders and unloaders, so that's another delay. So construction is a big delay. And there's really nothing you can do about speeding that up or slowing it down. It's, they don't have the 2x4s that they need. They don't have the doorknobs that they need. They can't get the windows in time. So I think having a good general contractor, of course, is going to help that process, but being realistic about those timeframes, and erring on the side of delay rather than shorter, because there's really just nothing you can do. I think also another area that gets practices delayed is credentialing. People don't start credentialing soon enough. There's a rumor going around that it takes only 90 days to get someone credentialed and contracted, and that is not true. It can take, 6 to 9 months just to get an application approved. It's just a really slow.
I'm going to take some notes while we're talking. This is important.
Yeah, it's a really slow.
I got another question to follow up, but so 6 to 9 months for credentialing.
Yes.
All right.
And is that just like across the board or just certain payers?
Certain payers. I mean, Medicare, thankfully and shockingly, goes pretty smooth. I mean, you probably could get a Medicare approval in 60 to 90 days. And it just depends on, who's the biggest player in your state, how bad do they need your specialty in your area. Sometimes that can move it through faster. And also just having somebody who's knowledgeable about the process can also help it move through faster. But really, it's just an old, out-of-date, archaic system where there are duplications of efforts. You're still faxing in forms. It's crazy.
Now, I'm curious. I know we're not trying to make a payer episode out of this, but I do have questions. So I've seen different responses from urgent care owners that are startups on the payer side. Some say, hey, I need a website up right now that has my info on it to prove that I'm real. Or I don't need that right now. I'm just trying to get my doors available to see type, like not like I can walk into a building type thing. And I'll let you know about the website. And like, it's been a lot of like, there's no certainty, like in terms of these are things I need so the credentials will get approved. Are there some like key things that everybody needs out of the gate just to smooth out that process a little bit?
Absolutely. You first and foremost need a location address. You cannot fill out an application without the actual address and getting it. I've even had a clinic that I worked with that had a startup in the suite downstairs, but wanted their permanent location to be upstairs, which was a different suite number, had to completely start over because that suite number was a different address. And a lot of these payer contracts and credentialing and in network situations are based on service location. So knowing for sure what your address is going to be and that it is that, and check with the post office to make sure that that is registered with the post office as the actual address.
Like
that issue come up before. And then, of course, you want your tax ID and your MPI number. But really, it's that address and then a phone number. A lot of times they'll want a phone number that will be your forever phone number. I've had some clients who've set up those online phones, for temporary or just to say, hey, we're here, we're opening in however many months, and you can have that be your credentialing number, but then you have to keep it forever and forward it to your real number. So having a phone number in place can also help that process.
That kind of makes sense why most medical offices rarely move. Sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It's a big pain. It's a big pain.
Now, is that process exactly the same if you're adding locations, like the same exact thing?
It's the same thing. You fill out maybe a slightly different form, but it doesn't necessarily go any faster, even if you already have one location approved. It really just depends on the payer and their process, but it's absolutely still the same hair pulling process.
Yeah.
What are the top 3, maybe 4 potholes that you can help somebody avoid in trying to get from idea, concept to opening the door?
I think the first way that we can really help is with that financial feasibility study. I like to paint a very realistic picture of what it's going to financially look like, but also what it's operationally going to look like. I like to make sure that my clients know what they're getting into when they say they want to open their own business. I think sometimes people want to do it. Everybody's doing it for a different reason, and all of those reasons are fine and valid. But I think if you're thinking, I want to open my own practice so I can have 100% autonomy in the clinic and I can, treat my patients the way that I want to treat them. But you also have to make sure that payroll gets run. You work on HR
They forget
issues.
about the business side.
It's a whole other job.
Yeah.
And I have worked with clients who go through that whole process, open up the clinic, and it is just not for them. And they go right to an employment situation and they walk away from it. But I think if you can be prepared on the front end, understand financially what you're getting into, and then also business-wise, what are you getting into and what are you responsible for? I feel like it goes a lot smoother throughout the whole process. Another area, I think a lot of our areas are planning, but I think setting that timeline, understanding what the realistic timeline is and what does that mean for you financially, but also what does that mean for you? How long do you have to stay at your old job? That becomes, I become a therapist at that point. When
I think we saw one of those with
there.
Our clients one time.
Right. Just hang in there. You can make it 3 more months. We just got to wait until those doors come and they can put the doors on the new practice. But I think those are, a lot of the planning and just being financially prepared. I really think those are the best ways that we can help.
So I've got to ask the question, are these people that you're going into therapy sessions with because, they're at their job and they're waiting to open a new one. How do they keep that from their employer? Do they? I mean, are they keeping super hush about this, or are they full open? Hey, I'm doing this and I'm just biding my time here.
So most of the time, if you're employed and you are working with me on the background, it is very hush hush, and we have a lot of after hours meetings, early morning meetings. But a lot of times, I recommend that my clients don't tell their employer, at least until we're in a place where we can reasonably say, this is our opening date and you could practice in X number of days at your new location. because I have had situations where the employer did find out that the doctor was planning to leave and open up their own practice and basically become a competitor, and they were fired immediately.
Yeah.
And that was the
I
reason
figured.
for the hurry up and open in 3 months situation. So we really try to get to a comfortable place before we suggest you turn in your notice or, start meeting with people outside.
Are non-competes a big issue in this space? No.
No, they're really not. For the most part, they don't impact physicians, and it really depends on your local rules. And if you're coming from a health system, sometimes there can be proximity rules where you can't have the same kind of practice within a 5 or 10 mile radius of the health system. There might be some sort of limitations like that, but I've never really had anybody get impacted by any of those type of non-compete situations.
Love it. All right. So in order for a practice to be successful, they have to have new patients coming through the door. And this is going to sound self-serving, but I don't want it to come across that way. I really want your opinion on this for our listeners. This is a podcast where we're helping people get new patients through the door, and they're listening to this podcast for that very reason. All right. Mm-hmm. So let me ask this a different way. What should absolutely be solid in place before they contact a marketing person to help them?
I would say financing, your location, and have your credentialing started. And then
let's dig into each one of those though. Okay. Let's dig into each one of those. All right. So, and was there another one you wanted to add to that list?
I don't know.
Okay. So maybe it'll
sound
all right.
Sounds solid to me.
When you say financials, there's a very big difference between having a business plan with a financial layout and having money. So when you say financials, do you mean SBA loans gone through and they have money in the bank?
I mean, have money in the bank. You got to know where that money is coming from, and then you know how much money you can spend.
Okay.
So the question around that, what's the expectation of when the doctor owner will actually get to pay himself?
So when I do a financial projection, I'm also realistic and know that, doctors also need to eat and feed and clothe their family, and, they have bills to pay too. I build that into the budget to make sure that they can compensate themselves from the loan if they need it. If they can financially sustain themselves during this build-up period, that's great. But most people can't 100%. So I typically will build in some level of compensation for the physician in those budgets.
Perfect. All right. So over to location. One of our rules is, can you receive mail? Now that has become a lot less relevant lately, but from a location perspective, what does that look like in order for them to contact somebody to help them start growing or launch?
Well, to me, the location is important because once you have that finalized, I mean, that's where you're going to be. And I want to start telling people that's where I'm going to be as soon as we can. So that's going to be as soon as the doctor has turned in their notice. So they would have a lease signed. They would have their loan signed and in the bank. And we would have started credentialing. So we're going to have an idea of who our insurances are going to be, who we did accept. And then that's going to also tell us who are we going to try to market to. So I think you'd need to know for sure your location before you even start thinking about bringing people in.
Well, you're going to need that just for the credentialing anyway, correct?
You absolutely are.
Okay. So with the credentialing, you said it takes 6 to 9 months ramp up to get the approvals done. Minimum 6, max 9 for you. You can do it in 90 days. But that's your superpower. So is it, once they get their credentialing, is it game on? Like, let's open the doors, or are you saying I've got this box checked? That's one step closer.
So once they get their insurance approvals and they are in network, they're contracted and ready to go. Absolutely. Open the doors. Let's bring them all in. There is this weird limbo where you might have some of your payers you'd have approvals with, but some of them are still processing. And I still would say, if we've got maybe 75% of who we think our payer mix is going to be, if we've got approvals for 50 to 75%, really it's just kind of a game time decision. But if you've got enough payers approved that you feel comfortable, you could bring people in and take insurance and everything would work smoothly, I say, let's do it. And you kind of figure out how are you going to handle those out of network contracts or patients until you get in network. There are some opportunities to request the contracts to be backdated. So maybe you might see a patient and you're not in network yet, and you might hold the claim until you get that approval letter in and see what your effective date is. If your effective date predates the visit date, you can bill it and get paid under your contract. You could also tell your patient, hey, we're not in network yet. This is an out-of-network visit. Maybe they have out-of-network coverage, or maybe they're just a cash pay. Or what typically happens is the doctor pretends that they're in network for all intents and purposes and says, we'll collect your copay, but they don't want to charge the patient more just because that paperwork is still processing. So they might look up the copay or whatever the percentage of the visit might be and just have the patient pay the same as if they weren't in network, and kind of roll the dice with whether the insurance company is going to backdate and they can file that claim or not. So there is some gray area still there if you're opening before you have all your approvals. But there are definitely ways to handle it. So there are situations where I would still say, hey, we're open for business. Let's go.
So sandbag those patient claims until you're going to get paid on them. Got it.
Yes.
I mean, it makes, because like from like a patient standpoint, if I'm just paying my copay and I know that you're not going to squeeze more money out of me, it seems fine. Like the doctor's taking the risk, but at the same time, he has salaried staff that's getting paid no matter who comes through the door.
Mm-hmm.
So from his eyes, that $40 is worth more to him than nothing. So I get the mindset. We've had urgent cares come to us or startups, and they, because they're away in credentialing, like they said, all right, we're just doing, can y'all just focus on immigration physicals or whatever? And we're doing a cash only system until.
Boy, is that lucrative.
Yeah, it is. Like immigration physicals is an NDOT. That's a game changer for some of these urgent cares.
And you could do that. Some, have cash pay services that they can offer if they're doing a weight loss clinic in addition to urgent care. They can absolutely start doing those, providing those services. Or, you could just say, hey, right now we're only taking Medicare and Blue Cross, and see, just let people know. But you hate to have somebody who wants to be a patient turned away just because applications are pending. So there's some decisions that have to be made in those situations.
So I have a question around where the industry is and where it's going. So we had come from a symposium last week, and the theme was the margins are getting tighter. Volume matters because we can't increase our reimbursements. And they have like legitimate, like, what would I say, like 2026, by 2026, like things would be where they're not making any money.
Well, they're at break even today.
Yeah, they're basically approaching break even now. So you've obviously seen the books on the other side. I'm curious, like, is that holding true? Are you seeing improvements or declines? What are you seeing? Where do you think it's going?
So I think, unfortunately, that is true. We are in this weird in-between time period where we used to be 100% fee for service, which means you get paid on your volume. Every head count is a dollar sign. And now over the last probably 10 years or so, everyone, insurance companies, the government, and probably physicians are pushing more towards getting paid based on your outcomes. So value-based reimbursement is the direction that we're heading in. So there are some value-based reimbursements, some alternative payment models that are out there, but you're also still getting paid on a fee for service. So you're in this weird in between where you still have to churn out as many patients as possible because that's still really how you get paid. But you're also trying to enter this market where you're getting judged and paid on your outcomes. So you have to perform high quality, low cost with results driven results. And it's close to impossible to make it really work. So I think that the direction that we're going in is value-based reimbursement, to where it's going to be more based on the savings that you produce for the insurance or government, and the outcomes for the patient. Like the healthier that your patient is, the more money that you would make, because you get a cut of the savings that you're basically giving the insurance company by not sending people to the hospital or having, chronic illnesses. So I think that's the direction that we're going in. But as for right now, everyone is stuck between these two systems, and it's just hard. It is hard.
Yeah. We were eating lunch with a guy that owned hundreds of locations.
I think like 170,
something like that. And he was raging mad.
His whole body was red.
His face was. He was cussing, not us, but just like he was mad
at a certain prayer.
I'm not saying his name, so I don't mind saying United.
Yeah,
the point I'm trying to make, though, it wasn't even that so much as this value-based system that you're talking about. He said, I'll show you my value. I'll just shut all of my clinic doors and let everybody go to their emergency room and watch you skyrocket in your cost. And that's the only way they'll allow you to prove your value. See, that's the gap that hasn't been filled yet.
Right.
And if anybody can bridge that gap, they're going to be a bazillionaire, because right now there's no way, unless you're part of a hospital system, for you to prove your value, because those systems don't talk to one another unless they're part of the same.
Yeah. I wish they could just have where they can pull data from an ER, and then when an urgent care moves in proximity, watch the numbers. And if it dips, it's like a pass the savings along type of thing. Like, you saved us $50,000 a month here, we're going to give you half of, or a percentage of that back into your reimbursements, because there was an actual impact.
Isn't that less money for the hospital, though? Don't they want more money?
Yeah,
isn't that in conflict with one another?
Yeah.
Well,
it just seems to me like, why would they share that?
Provide, I think the idea is to provide necessary services. And it's not just to treat people. So many people go to the emergency room, and this is why urgent cares are so popular now and have such a valid purpose, is that so many people go to the emergency room when they don't need to be there. And it clogs up the system. They're, wasting resources, and those resources are people. We don't have enough people to provide these services. So don't go to the ER unless you think you're going to need to be admitted. Go to an urgent care and be treated and, get in and out. And don't go to your primary care doctor and wait for 3 months when you have an urgent condition. I think people don't really understand where they're supposed to go. And I really appreciate how on a lot of urgent care websites, they list, when to know when to go to urgent care versus when to go to the emergency room. And I think it's important.
That'd be a good identifier, just almost like a type form where you tell us your symptoms. Go to the ER.
Is this your symptoms?
Come on in. Here's an appointment.
Or I wish Google would come out with some type of.
It is. Yeah, I love that. That's a great analogy.
I wish Google have like their own analyzer built in search or something. Based on this, you should probably go to an urgent care.
Right.
Well, as I said before we got cranked up, I knew it was going to get right up against the time, and we're like, we got so much more to say, but we're out of time.
Yeah, we're already past 30 minutes.
That's how it goes, right? So Georgina, I want you to first just thank you for being on the podcast. Let everybody know the best way to get in touch with you if they're thinking about opening an urgent care, or they're unhappy with the process that's happened so far and they need to get this thing back on the rails. How would they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
I think the best way is either through email or our website. My information's on our Carr, Riggs and Ingram website at cricpa.com.
Okay.
So reach out anytime. I'm happy to be a resource. Just let me know that you heard about us on Walk-ins Welcome, And I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody who has a question.
And we'll make sure that we drop that link in the show notes for you to just be able to click so you don't have to memorize all that. I've had a really good time talking with you because I geek out over the data and the numbers and the process.
And I appreciate that what you're telling us is what we've heard from urgent cares and startups and the challenges that they face. So it's cool to hear from both sides of the story, and it lines up. And then just hearing last week about the payer frustrations, you're like, yep, that's real.
Yeah.
So really appreciate that. And so going back to those who are listening still, this is where, if you're thinking of the starting of the urgent care, this was the episode that kind of gets you in the right mindset. Because if you're checking off yeses, maybe it is time for you to start up. Maybe this is the perfect time to look at it. So thank you again for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we hope to have you back on in the future. Until then, you guys go out and have a great week. Go out and crush it. What you do matters. You're making a difference in your communities. And we will see you next Wednesday on another episode.
See ya.
See ya.